Ready for a deep dive. We're heading into 17th century Japan, samurai, shoguns, the whole bit. And our guide is John Blackthorne, an English pilot who finds himself in a world that's completely alien to him.
It's a fascinating story. And what makes the source material so compelling is how it captures the clash of cultures, the challenges of communication, and the struggle to survive in a world where the rules are completely different.
It's like he stepped into a time machine, not just sailed to a different country. We're talking about a Japan that was almost completely closed off to the West, a land of samurai and shoguns, of strict social hierarchies and ancient traditions.
Right, and Blackthorne's story, at least how it's presented in the source material, really throws you right into the deep end. He doesn't arrive in Japan on some diplomatic mission. He's shipwrecked,
Yeah.
injured, captured, completely at the mercy of people he sees as barbarians.
Talk about a rough start. But there's more to this shipwreck than just the danger, right? I mean, it seems like a really deliberate choice by the author to throw Blackthorne into the situation with absolutely nothing familiar to cling to.
Oh, absolutely. It strips him bare, forces him to confront this new reality on its own terms, and it sets the stage for the core themes of survival, adaptation, and this collision of worldviews that we see playing out throughout the story.
Okay, so let's talk about those cultural differences. What really jumped out at you in the source material?
There's this one scene early on where Blackthorne refuses to be tied up. He sees it as a matter of pride, a point of honor. But to his Japanese captors, it's a completely baffling and disrespectful act. They're trying to maintain order, follow their own cultural protocols, and he's completely missing the point.
Yeah, talk about a recipe for disaster. It's a great example of how actions that seem perfectly normal to us can be deeply offensive in another culture. And it makes you think how much of what we consider normal is just what we're used to, not some universal truth.
Exactly. And that's what makes Blackthorne's journey so fascinating. He's constantly bumping up against these cultural barriers, like he's trying to navigate a maze in the dark and keeps running into walls. He has to adapt, not just to survive physically, but to make sense of this new social landscape.
And he doesn't get a lot of time to adjust. I mean,
Uh,
one minute he's a shipwreck survivor, the next he's witnessing the brutal realities of samurai justice.
right. The source material doesn't sugarcoat things. It shows the harsh realities of that time period. Blackthorne is exposed to executions, violence, a completely different way of viewing life and death. And you see him grappling with that, trying to understand it.
It's that push and pull I find so interesting. Like, he's horrified by some of what he sees, but also strangely drawn to it. There's that scene where he witnesses a public execution and is obviously disturbed, but he also observes how the condemned man faces his death with incredible stoicism, almost like he's welcoming it.
Right, and that goes back to the idea of cultural context. Blackthorne is seeing this
Mm.
through his own lens, where it seems crazy, unnatural. But within the samurai code of honor, this ritual suicide, seppuku, it's seen as an act of courage, atonement.
Which is a lot to process when you're still trying to figure out how to say hello without causing offense. But Blackthorne has bigger problems than just social etiquette, right? I mean, he's caught up in this power struggle between these daimyos, these feudal lords vying for control.
Absolutely. The source material introduces us to some key figures early on: Toranaga, the cunning and ambitious one, who sees something in Blackthorne, some potential advantage. And then there's his rival, Ishido, who seems much more ruthless, more willing to use force to get what he wants.
It's like Blackthorne has stumbled onto the set of a high-stakes chess game, only he doesn't know how to play, and the consequences of a wrong move are deadly. And it's not like it's just those local rulers he has to worry about either, right? It's like adding another layer of chaos to an already chaotic situation.
Well, there's the Portuguese. They were major players in that part of the world back then, the East Indies trade and all that. They had trading posts, colonies, you name it.
Which, I mean, talk about culture shock, right? Here's Blackthorne, an Englishman, and England and Portugal in the 17th century, they weren't exactly best friends.
Well, that's putting it mildly. Let's just say there was no love lost between them. Rivalry over trade, religion, you name it. It was a power struggle playing out across the globe. And in the source material, that tension is really brought to light through Blackthorne's interactions with Jesuit priest Father Alvida.
Oh, yeah, Father Oviedo. Now, there's a character. Talk about a clash of ideologies. You've got Blackthorne, a Protestant in a land dominated by Buddhism,
Yep.
and then you throw this Jesuit priest into the mix who sees Blackthorne as, well, a heretic.
It's a powder keg. And their conversations are fascinating because they reveal so much about the mindset of that time.
Yeah.
It's not just about faith, it's about control, influence, the battle for souls playing out against the backdrop of global empires.
It's like a game within a game, right? They're both playing for different stakes with different roles. and Blackthorne's stuck in the middle trying to avoid getting played.
And all the while, he's trying to learn. He's soaking up the language, the customs, the way things work in this new world. And it's through his interactions with characters like Mariko, the woman assigned to teach him Japanese, that we really see this transformation begin.
Their relationship is interesting, isn't it? Because it's not just a simple love story, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, you could look at it that way, on the surface.
But Mariko's more than just a romantic interest. She's his guide, his interpreter, the one who's helping him unlock the mysteries of this culture that seems so alien to him at first.
And she challenges him too, right?
Yeah.
Forces him to question his own assumptions, like that scene where he blows up at her for not sticking up for him, for just accepting a situation he sees as unfair. He's missing the point completely. Totally. He's judging her actions through his own cultural lens, expecting her to behave in a way that would be totally inappropriate in their society. Remember, Mariko is bound by these social constraints, these unwritten rules that Blackthorne doesn't even know exist. She's trying to protect him in her own way.
It's a good reminder that communication is so much more than just words, you know? It's about understanding the unspoken rules, the weight of all that history and tradition that shapes how people interact. It's fascinating, really.
And it's a great example of how the source material uses these smaller, more personal moments to illuminate these bigger themes. It's not just about Blackthorne surviving these external threats. It's about him confronting his own internal biases, learning to see the world through a different lens.
Right. He's being forced to unlearn so much of what he thought he knew about the world. And in the process, he's starting to see the cracks in his own worldview, right? Like, what if everything he thought was normal and right is just one way of looking at things?
Exactly. And that's where the real growth happens, when you start questioning your own deeply held assumptions. It can be uncomfortable, sure, but it's how we learn and evolve.
So while Blackthorne's going through this whole internal transformation, he's got all this external pressure too. Still caught between Toranaga and Ishido, trying to figure out a way to get back to his ship and his crew. Speaking of the crew, what happens to them while Blackthorne's off learning about Japanese culture?
Well, they're not exactly having a relaxing vacation. The source material doesn't focus on them quite as much, but it does show how they're also struggling to adapt, each in their own way. And they make their own mistakes, of course.
Yeah, like that incident with the crew member who, well, let's just say he didn't quite grasp the concept of Japanese bathroom etiquette. Not their finest moment.
Definitely not. But it's a perfect illustration of how what might seem totally insignificant in one culture can be a major offense in another. And the consequences can be severe, as that poor crew member quickly learns.
It really highlights the stakes, doesn't it? I mean, this isn't just some abstract cultural exchange program. It's a matter of life or death for these guys.
Exactly. And it underscores the point that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Understanding cultural differences isn't just about being polite. It's about recognizing those fundamental differences in how people see the world, what they value, what they fear, and how those differences can have real, tangible consequences.
Which brings us back to Blackthorne and his relationship with Toranaga. There's this kind of grudging respect developing between them, isn't there? Like they're starting to see each other as more than just pawns in this game.
There is, and I think that's one of the things that makes this story so compelling. Here are these two men from completely different worlds thrown together by circumstance, and they're finding common ground in the most unlikely of places. It's that classic tale of unlikely allies, but with this added layer of cultural complexity.
And that alliance is put to the test big time when Toranaga gets that message from Ishido, demanding that he hand Blackthorne over. Talk about pressure. You can practically feel the tension in the room when that happens.
It's a pivotal moment, because it forces Toranaga to make a choice. Does he give in to his rival's demands, or does he stand his ground? And either way, there are going to be consequences.
And you know Toranaga, he's got this reputation, right? He's always thinking 10 steps ahead, always got a plan. But this feels different, doesn't it?
It does. Because it's not just about strategy anymore. It's personal. Now, handing over Blackthorne, yeah, it'd be the easy way out in some ways. But it'd make Toranaga look weak, like he could be pushed around. And for a leader like him, that's unacceptable.
So it's about more than just protecting Blackthorne. It's about saving face, right?
Exactly. And face in that culture, it's huge, right? It's about honor, reputation. To lose face is to lose everything. And for a man in Toranaga's position, well, the stakes are monumental.
So he's trapped between a rock and a hard place. If he hands Blackthorne over, he loses respect. But if he protects him, he risks a war he might not win.
And the source material does a great job of highlighting that dilemma. It really gets you thinking about what you would do in that situation. Would you risk everything for what you believe in, even if it meant going against the grain?
Tough call.
But what about Blackthorne? He must realize he's the center of this whole mess.
Oh, he knows. He's not stupid. He's picked up on how things work in this world, how Toranaga operates. Blackthorne's a quick study. He has to be to survive.
Learning the rules of the game on the fly.
Exactly. And it's not just about customs and language, but the whole psychology of power, how it's wielded, how to anticipate the moves of a man like Toranaga.
So when Toranaga comes up with this plan to send Blackthorne on a secret mission, it's not just a convenient way to get him out of the picture.
There's no way. It's a gamble for both of them.
Hmm.
Toranaga gets to size up his enemies, see what they're really up to, and Blackthorne, well, he sees a chance to maybe take control of his own destiny.
Which is part of what makes his character so compelling, right? He's not just along for the ride. He's trying to make his own breaks, even in this crazy situation.
Absolutely. He's resourceful, ambitious. He doesn't give up.
Mm-hmm.
And you see those qualities come out even more as the story progresses.
Now, with this mission, though, things get even more complicated for Blackthorne, especially when it comes to Mariko. I mean, she's gone from being his teacher to, well, a potential risk.
Definitely. She's the one who's helped him understand this world. But now she represents a danger. If she reveals his plans, it's all over.
Mm.
And the way their relationship develops under that pressure is fascinating.
The source material doesn't make it simple, does it? It's not some straightforward love story.
Not at all. It's nuanced. There's genuine affection, yeah, but also mistrust, fear, and a sense that they both need each other, even if they can't fully admit it. They're bound together by circumstance.
It's really a classic story when you think about it. Two people from completely different worlds finding common ground when everything's falling apart around them.
And that's what makes this more than just an adventure story, isn't it? It's about that human connection, how it can bloom even in the most unexpected places.
So we leave Blackthorne sailing off into danger, into the heart of samurai country, with more questions than answers.
But that's the beauty of a story like this, right? It sticks with you, makes you think about what you would do, how you'd react in those situations.
Would we cling to our own worldview, or find a way to bridge that gap, even if it meant changing everything we thought we knew? That's something to think about, isn't it?
It really is.